It is my pleasure to introduce Miss Cleo Gross. Cleo is our class of 2017 Salutatorian.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a little bit nervous. I suppose I'd like to thank my classmates. Many of you have made me laugh, and I do my best to return the favor. For the most part, we seniors have the same sense of humor. I think this is part of the reason we get along so well. We've had moments, to be sure, but in the end, the magic of our beautiful friendship shows through. I want to thank you all for being my friends and for the experiences we've shared as a class. Our class is so small, but our personalities sure do fill a room. If there's one trait our class shares that I admire, it would be our amazing ability to complete last-minute assignments and get a passing grade. Senior year is not easy in any sense of the word. It's a stressful, long, and terrible year. But sharing this year with all of you and years past has taken the edge off a bit. We all caught terminal case of senioritis at one point or another, but we still managed to limp across the finish line thanks to a few teachers. Not naming any names. Mr. Butcher. A few staff members greatly contributed to our success. They've inspired us and dragged us by our hair, figuratively speaking, through 4 grueling years of high school. And here we are now in our pristine white gowns thanks to these special teachers. I think you know who you are. The administration has also greatly affected our success. For all you still in elementary school and middle school, I want you to remember this. You think you've got lots of time. Mathematically, you do. If you're just leaving kindergarten, you have roughly 1,920 days of school left. But I'll tell you from experience, those days fly by. Being a child, or even once you're in middle school, is the least stressful time of your life. As you get older, you learn things. Things like liability insurance does not cover damage to your own vehicle. People are not always who you think they are. It's hard to have a job, get good grades, and participate in extracurricular activities. Everything is not sunshine and happiness it's sometimes made out to be. The seniors here are being, or have been, faced with these and many more harsh realities. I remember when the most important thing was what color Play-Doh I got in kindergarten. Now I wonder if I can achieve my dreams, how much debt I'll be in after college, how I'll support myself for the rest of my life. Priorities shift, and lives change. I guess what I want to say is enjoy yourselves now before life gets too serious. Well, this year was rough, but hey, we got through it. And I think I speak for all of us, the class of 2017, when I say, well, that's over. From flipping bottles to singing like lunatics to studying hard and helping each other out, we've had a good run. Thank you.
Thank you, Cleo, for your remarks. Next, I would like to introduce the class of 2017 Valedictorian, Miss Madison Markakis.
Hello. There are 3 kinds of people in this world, those who can count and those who can't. There are 10 kinds of people in this world, those who understand binary code and those who don't. There are 11 kinds of people in this world, those who know Roman numerals and those who don't. As human beings, we spend most of our lives comparing ourselves to each other or even against ourselves. We consistently focus on the differences between each other, whether it's a competitive instinct or trying to find a sense of self-accomplishment. I want to share a song that touched my heart from my class. It's called City on a Hill by Casting Crowns. Did you hear of the city on a hill? Said one old man to the other. It once shined bright and it would be shining still, but they all started turning on each other. You see, the poets thought the dancers were shallow, and the soldiers thought the poets were weak. And the elders saw the young ones as foolish, and the rich man never heard the poor man speak. Each one thought that they knew better, but they were different by design. Instead of standing strong together, they let their differences divide. But it was the rhythm of the dancers that gave the poets life. It was the spirit of the poets that gave the soldiers strength to fight. It was the fire of the young ones. It was the wisdom of the old. It was the story of the poor man that needed to be told. And one by one will we run away with our made-up minds to leave it all behind, and the light begins to fade in the city on the hill. At Caprock, we spend many moments of suffering in close readings and analysis of poems and texts. This song stood out to me because, when looked at more closely, it describes the tragic reality that differences are the first thing we notice about others, and sometimes it clouds our judgment of what someone might be feeling or experiencing. Through my entire time at Caprock, 10 years, I've heard these things passed around in the halls, told directly to me, or even felt them myself. What does she have that I don't? She's not worth a minute of your time. I look way better than them. I'll never be as good as you. I wish I were more like them. If we hadn't said anything like this at some point in our lives, we've thought it. It's an instinct of whether we'll be able to be accepted by others and what we think we have to do to get there. But imagine how much better a place we can live in if we stop for 2 seconds and stop comparing. We find that each of us has a beating heart, a working brain, independent emotions, a conscience, and every other aspect that makes us human. This is what makes my graduating class so unique. Out of 11 of us, not 2 of us come from the same background or have had the same experiences. That is, aside from being tortured by the white whale for 2 years. Despite our histories and values, we still find it within ourselves to be accepting, and heaven forbid, friendly toward one another. And this is why I can say I'm proud to graduate with these seniors, in spite of all our differences. I leave you with a quote from a character named Meowth in an 18-year-old movie. We do have a lot in common. The same earth, the same air, the same sky. Maybe if we started looking at what's the same instead of what's different, well, who knows? Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Madison is our outgoing student council president. I would like her to introduce her successor, Miss Katie Fix. I'd like to continue the tradition of the Medal of Leadership Award, which recognizes a student for leadership in all areas: athletics, character, scholarship, school spirit, and service. The historical reference for the mantle of leadership comes from the time of the Crusades. The leader of a battalion of soldiers wore a mantle or a cloak of brightly colored material, so the other soldiers could see him during battle. When the leader had to leave the field due to reassignment or injury, the brightly colored mantle was passed on to the next leader, so the men would know whom to follow. This principle can be applied today as Madison Markakis, the current student council president, passes the mantle of leadership on to the next student council president. This year, the mantle of leadership will pass to Katie Fix. Let's give one more round of applause to our outgoing and incoming student council presidents. Our seniors are required to write and orally defend their culminating thesis, What is the Good Life? In the class of 2017, the faculty selected Cleo Gross's thesis as the winner of the Senior Thesis Award. Cleo, please come join us at the podium and give us a few words on your thesis.
Hello again. So, as she said, we're required to write a 20-page paper at the end of the senior year anyways. So, for my good life, briefly, I said that independence and genuine relationships are a key factor. I also said that knowing yourself is important, but I won't go into that so much. so this might be some kind of a shock, but pirates are really my idol. So Blackbeard, also known as Edward Teach, he had 14 wives and he loved them all very much over the years. I swear this man was immortal. I mean, he died from 5 gunshot wounds, a slit throat, and over 20 sword wounds, but he just kept fighting. I think that's pretty great. So the wives showed genuine relationships. And also I think something that's cool is he lit his beard on fire before he'd go into battle, which kind of shows his independence and his free spirit. I really dig that. Then another, a female pirate, her name is Cheng Ai Sao. She's from China. She married a pirate, and that's how she became a pirate. She left her home, which shows obviously relationships. With her husband, she ruled a huge fleet of ships, which includes a lot of men. And through this, she found her independence and her power over other people. The more famous female pirates, Mary Read and Anne Bonny, they didn't know at first when they met that the other was a girl. They were both dressed as men, but they became fast friends nonetheless. And once they found out that they were both women, they became even closer, which is an example of their genuine relationships. Overall, I envy pirates because they're free. I think the feeling of the breeze through your hair, just being able to look out and see the vast horizons, that's really what I would strive for in my good life, and that's why I included pirates in my definition. Also, I'd like to state, as a bit of a disclaimer, that I don't envy pirates for their crime, I envy them for their freedom.
Cleo, in recognition of your hard work in creating and defending your senior thesis, I present you with this certificate. Next, I would like to introduce our faculty speaker, Mr. Andrew Collins. He earned a bachelor's degree in family psychology from the Corbin College and master degrees in elementary education and educational leadership. He taught 7th grade at Caprock Academy before becoming our Director of Support Services. Let's welcome Mr. Andrew Collins.
Good morning. I will like to start with saying that, letting you guys know I'm very honored to have been selected by these fine students, these graduates, to be your faculty speaker this morning. I was there, they were my first class at Caprock 6 years ago. And so I have a very special connection with them, being that I first experienced this whole thing that is Caprock Academy with this class of students. So I am very happy to be here. So some say that the day that you graduate from high school is the first day of the rest of your life. Others might add that your life could be summed up as a collection of all your past experiences. It's also been said that every moment is a gift, and that's why we call this moment the present. I think that many of the phrases you hear connected to today have their place, but ultimately I would like to try to convince you that today is not really about the future or the past, but rather this moment right now. So much of our lives are spent dwelling on the past or dreaming about the future. It is an activity that we are taught and encouraged to carry out from a very early age. As a child, I saw my own parents looking forward to vacations, or spending time with friends or loved ones, or just trying to finish a day of work so that they could get home to relax and watch TV. We dream of a day that we can finally own the toy or the video game, or the car or the house that we're told we need to have. There's always some new sequel or prequel that I've been dying to see since the preview came out last winter. Conversely, if I'm not dreaming about the future, I am reminiscing about the past. I look back at times that bring dear memories and wish I could live in that moment forever. I also remember sad and terrible times that I wish I could change. I think about people who are not here anymore, who could be enjoying this moment with me. There are sounds, smells, sights that triggered these memories. As I glance back at the path I've taken to get here, I'm reminded of easy descents, mingled with steep climbs, slow saunters, desperate sprints, like this last quarter for our graduates. This path will never change. It is what has brought me to this point and this time. However, I will say that I've always taken an issue with the analogy of the path to represent life. It's easy to see why so many use it, as evidenced by the previous metaphors you've just heard me say. The analogy's weakness is that it really only applies to where I've been, not where I'm going. On a physical path, my direction is obvious and set before me. I can plan for obstacles that I can't yet see. I even know exactly how far away my destination is, along with just how long it will take me to get there. If I'm so inclined, I can study a map to make better sense of the world around me, just in case I cannot see past the forest for the trees. Best of all, if I don't like where I'm going, I can just turn around and go back. But unfortunately, life does not have this rewind button. What has been will continue to have been, and time will tick on. So we're left with remembering the past that can't be changed, dreaming of a future that has not yet come, all the while falling into the trap of ignoring the present. And let me remind you that traps are bad. They grab and they hold. They restrict movements. They impose limits that would otherwise not exist. They crush hope and they bring despair and make you settle for less. But they can be avoided if you know what to look for and where they are. And the best way to learn these lessons, of course, is through a detailed description, or more appropriately, through one last lecture from Mr. Collins. Webster's New World Dictionary defines lecture as an informative talk to a class or a lengthy scolding. While I'm not truly going to do either of these things to their fullest extent, I would like to try to impart a small amount of information in maybe a half scolding tone. At Caprock Academy, we ask our students to engage in thoughtful discussions on almost a daily basis. Our hope is that these discussions will weave a tapestry of wisdom, maturity, and grace in our students' minds. One of the readings that they will discuss is titled Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was a concentration camp survivor from the Second World War. His premise sounds simple, though many find it hard to carry out in the flesh. He posits that life is not about finding happiness, but rather about finding meaning, even if this meaning comes from sadness, tragedy, or pain. Frankl actually quotes Nietzsche as a recurring theme to his memoir, in that he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. So then, are happiness, joy, and fun wrong or bad? Of course not. Humans are composed of many parts, some tangible, others not. Love, sadness, anger, happiness. These things can't be seen, touched, or even measured, except possibly by way of comparing them to our own experiences. Yet they are integral to our existence. But no matter how important a piece of my existence may be, it will never be equal to the whole meaning of my existence. I have experienced sadness and pain. I cradled a friend in my arms while he was grasping at the last strings of life. I felt the grip of my father's hand mere hours before he breathed his last. Should I try to forget these moments? Or do they contribute a greater, deeper meaning to my life? I've also had wonderful and joyous moments when my wife said I do, surprisingly to me and most everybody that knew me. Or on the days that my children were born, when I experienced a different love at a depth I had never known was possible. So should I let these moments override the saddest ones in order to live a happier life? By no means. For what is light without the darkness to define it? As one walks squinting into the intensity of the sunlight from the darkness of a cave. So my joy is all the more intense when contrasted with the sadness that I let myself remember. The difficulty with emotion is that it clouds our memories. This does not make them incorrect or invalid. It's just how emotion works. The problem is that we can forget about the sun while we're still in the cave. While I am in the middle of hardship, I can easily imagine that this is all there is and all there ever will be, and this is a trap. As you look forward into your future, are you hoping for an experience to add to your collection of experiences? To what end? What will you do after the experience is over? What if it does not live up to your expectations? Now try looking back into your past. Do your memories serve only the purpose of resurfacing old emotions? Do you relive experiences purely to feel what you felt at the time? Do you try to forget something because the associated emotion is just too painful? These are more traps. Recognize them for what they are. Expect them to appear in your life so that you may be able to escape them. So instead of seeing life as a path, I believe, as others have stated before me, that you should think of it as a book. The first few chapters have been written, but there are numerous pages that are still blank. The storyline has flowed from beginning to present, but what comes next is not yet written. So do not let what has been or what could be control you now. Today is not about the past or the future. Today is about right now in this moment, but not because of the gravity or the celebration. This moment is great because it is all you really have. In this moment, you can take pride. In this moment, you can direct what is to come. In this moment, you can give deeper meaning to what has come before. You have already lived in the past. Don't waste time living it again. Conversely, there will be time to live in the future when it comes. Don't look to change this moment. Live in this moment. And above all, don't let this moment define your purpose, but instead, you define your purpose with this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Howard Butcher. Mr. Butcher has worked as a shark researcher, commercial diver, farmhand, and the manager of a horse ranch. He is a published author, and one of his stories has been made into an animated movie that has been sold worldwide. His latest novel will be out this summer. His background and interest in education began with his work on the Ridgeway Schools Accountability Committee and a subsequent service on their Board of Education. With 3 consecutive keynote addresses, Mr. Butcher is by far our most popular speaker. Please help me welcome Mr. Howard Butcher.
Good morning, Caprock Academy, Headmaster Treesice, members of the administration, board members, parents, teachers, and students. One of the distinguishing features of the class of 2017 has been their overdeveloped sense of humor. They are very good at amusing one another and getting a laugh. Therefore, it seems apropos that I start off with a story, a true story, about a boy who also laughed hard. His father had taken the family on vacation to the tropical island Antigua in the West Indies. The boy was young, only in 5th grade. That summer, he put on a mask and snorkel for the first time and swam off the beach in water that sparkled like a blue opal. The experience changed his life. He stayed in the shallow water just off the beach, but eventually wanted to go out to deeper water. For some reason, he'd always been fascinated by sharks and pleaded with his father to swim out to the deep reef with him so they could see a shark. The father looked at the boy like he was assessing a lunatic. For reasons that the boy couldn't understand, his father had zero interest in seeing a shark in the ocean. He said, "No way, ever." Well, a couple of days passed, and to the boy's utter astonishment, one morning his father suddenly changed his mind and said he would indeed swim out with him to look for sharks. The big day came, and they put on their snorkel gear and were about to enter the sea when the boy's younger sister came running up to join them at the last minute. The boy didn't want her to come. He believed his sister would slow them down and ruin the trip. The father overruled the boy, and the three of them began swimming out to the deep reef to find a shark. Gradually, the water got deeper and deeper, and the ocean looked spooky. I'll tell you the rest of the story at the end of my remarks. Every class has its own character in chemistry, and the class of 2017 is no different. When I asked them which literary figures best represented them, they said Huckleberry Finn and Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. Really, I thought to myself, Huckleberry Finn? Socrates? At first blush, one is tempted to say the class of 2017 has nothing in common with these figures. But if one thinks about it a bit, there is some truth to it. Let's consider Huckleberry Finn first. He's a 12 or 13-year-old boy. The text is written from Huck's point of view. Like the class of 2017, Huck has a well-developed sense of humor. He jokes, he plays, and he takes off his civilized clothes whenever he can get away with it. Sort of like violating a school dress code. Aha, here one can see a clear parallel. Beyond Huck's preference for discarding his nice clothes, he is an astonishingly positive and sunny character. His wisecracking, storytelling, fun-loving ways almost conceal the harshness of his childhood. Huck tells his story in such a light-hearted way, it is almost possible to overlook the fact that he is an abused child. His mother has died, and his father is the town drunk, and he beats and at one point tries to kill Huck. A childhood like this can destroy a person. But Huck survives, and one might argue his sense of humor is part of the reason why. In this respect, the class of 2017 is similar to Huck. Like Huck, they understand that humor is one of the soul's best defenses against the slings and arrows of life. Through humor, Huck overcomes hardship and adversity. He is resilient, he is optimistic, he is emotionally healthy. And Huck is loyal. When Huck runs from his murderous father, he seeks freedom in nature. Along the way, he finds Jim a runaway slave. A teenage boy and a grown man are united by the common goal of seeking freedom and a better life. Huck wants to be free from his murderous father and Jim from slavery. Despite their age difference and backgrounds, they form a deep bond based on kindness and decency. They float down the Mississippi on their raft, fishing, swimming, having adventures, enjoying the river, looking at the night stars, and they are free, perhaps for the first time in their lives. Later in the story, Huck does something poignant and beautiful. He is racked by guilt because society has taught him that slavery is lawful and correct and that it is justified in the Bible. Consequently, Huck fervently believes that by helping Jim escape, he is breaking the law and betraying Miss Watson, a woman who has always been good to him. He also believes that he will be condemned to hell unless he turns Jim in. He dutifully writes a letter to Miss Watson to do what society has told him is the right thing. But after he writes the letter, Huck looks at Jim and thinks, because something eats at him inside. He feels devastated by his decision to return Jim to slavery. Mark Twain famously described Huck Finn as a book of mine where a sound heart and deformed conscience comes into collision, and conscience suffers defeat. Huck's sound heart wins. His deformed conscience is a product of his upbringing in a culture that believed slavery was lawful and moral, but his heart came with birth. It is pure. Somehow he understands that his society is wrong, that slavery is wrong, that Jim is a true friend, and Huck, just a 13-year-old boy, has the courage to stand up and reject the society that raised him. Huck tears up the letter. Huck is deeply skeptical of his society and culture, and rightly so. Here one can see a clear parallel with the class of 2017. They question popular culture and those in power. They see distinct differences between Caprock and other schools. What about Socrates? What on earth could the class of 2017 share with the father of Western philosophy? Socrates reportedly saw himself as a, quote, gadfly that would buzz around and irritate. Socrates would question people, usually people in authority, senators, poets, civic leaders, and teachers. I think Caprock teachers may have noticed the seniors doing their best gadfly impression at least a time or two. On a deeper level, why did Socrates behave like a gadfly? In Plato's Apology, he is accused of corrupting the youth of Athens and introducing new gods. He is on trial for his life and is ultimately put to death. Socrates explains that his fame started when Chaerephon asks the oracle at Delphi whether there is anyone wiser than Socrates. The oracle said, "There is no man wiser." Socrates doesn't believe it. He says, "I have no wisdom, great or small." Then he sets out to prove the oracle wrong. He questions, using the famous Socratic method, people who purport to be wise. Time and again, Socrates discovers these famous, important men don't have wisdom. Eventually, Socrates sees himself as being wiser than they, but only because he knows and admits he knows nothing. The famous, important men have no wisdom, but they don't know it or admit it. Socrates says, "I found that the men most in repute were all but the most foolish, and that some inferior men were really wiser and better." The class of 2017 are also skeptical of titles and ranks. They question the world around them in a similar manner. If they do not find what someone is saying credible, they will challenge it. Huck Finn would agree with Socrates. Huck stays loyal to a runaway slave and rejects men with the titles of king and duke. Huck gravitates towards people that are down to earth and good. Some members of the class of 2017 have been together for many years and are as loyal and bonded as Huck and Jim, and they certainly love being gadflies. So after considering the matter, there really are several legitimate parallels between the class of 2017 and Huck and Socrates. What a surprise. Speaking of surprises, it's time to return to the story of the boy swimming out to the deep reef with his father and sister to see a shark. The ocean grew deeper and more spooky as they went along. Suddenly, the boy's sister said she was tired. The father told her to swim to the beach of a small island they were right next to. She swam off to the island. The boy and his father went to the deep reef and looked for a shark, but there was no shark. Just deep blue with shafts of sunlight that moved in the water and made the ocean seem alive. After searching for a little while, they started back. The boy was disappointed. As they swam back, the boy's sister joined them, and she swam up and she said, "Look, Dad, look what I found. It's a conch." She held in her hands a beautiful conch shell, yellow on the outside and creamy white and beautiful pink on the inner lip. It was about as big as an American football. "And guess what?" she said. "The conch is still inside." She gave the large shell to her father. He held it up out of the water, and sure enough, you could see a pair of slit-like pupils peering out of the shell. The father said, "Yes, he's still inside. I can see him looking at me right now." Suddenly, a small, angry octopus slid out of the conch shell and landed on the father's shoulder with a wet plop. It looked like a small, angry red mop. It gripped his flesh with 8 tentacles covered with suction cups. Then the octopus quickly crawled down across the father's naked chest, looking for a safe crevice to hide in. It crawled quickly down his chest, across his stomach, and finally settled into the father's inner thigh and gripped tightly with all 8 tentacles. The boy had never heard his father scream before. And he had especially never heard his father scream like a full-grown woman. Pandemonium broke out as the father dropped the conch shell and began yelling and trying to pull the octopus off his inner thigh while swimming in a circle. The boy burst out in laughter. He laughed so hard it became hard to tread water. Finally, the father pulled the octopus off his inner thigh area, but now it clung to his hand, and he began waving his hand around like a cowboy riding a bull in a rodeo. The boy laughed harder. He laughed so hard he nearly drowned. Finally, the father put his hand in the sea, nice and calm, and the octopus let go. It swam off, inflating and deflating itself like an umbrella, opening and collapsing, spurting ink in its wake. Later, the father said, "All I could think of was his darn beak. I thought he was going to bite me." Drew, Aaron, Quinn, Asia, Cleo, Brooke, Maddie, Matthew, Jordan, Alexa, and Chloe. We'll miss you. I'll miss you. But we wish you great success and luck in the years ahead. I can imagine you buzzing to and fro like Socratic gadflies while floating downriver on a raft wearing straw hats like Huck. Work hard, have some fun, and don't lose your honor. Keep your sense of humor, but continue to read and write and educate yourself the rest of your life. As Shakespeare writes in The Taming of the Shrew, it is the mind that makes the body rich. To the class of 2017, we wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butcher, for your remarks. The founders of this school had a simple yet comprehensive vision. The charge they gave us was to strengthen the community through the involvement of parents, educators, and community leaders who work together to provide an environment that fosters academic excellence, develops strong character, and shapes global citizens who set life goals while living lives of service and virtue. Since Caprock Academy's inception, we have been guided by this vision. The 11 young adults before you are the fulfillment of this vision. We will now proceed with the conferral of diplomas. Will the candidates please rise? Director Fry, I have the honor to present these candidates. They have completed the course of study prescribed by Caprock Academy, the state of Colorado, and have been approved by the faculty. I now present these students to you in order that their earned diplomas may be conferred.
Good morning, graduates. By the authority vested in me by the Caprock Academy Board of Directors, the Charter School Institute in the state of Colorado, I hereby confer upon you a high school diploma with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities pertaining hereto.
We encourage family members and friends to recognize their graduates as each has presented their diploma. Pictures may be taken, but please do not block the official photographer or enter the graduate seating area.
Miss Jordan Annabelle DiDonato. Miss Paul Jordan Ordinary Colorado Nation University as the radiology major. Mr. Aaron James Dollar. Congratulations, Aaron. Miss Brooke Taylor Farrell. Miss Fallbrook going to Colorado Nation University as a nursing major. Miss Alexa Danielle Gray. After graduation, Alexa went to Metropolitan State University of Denver as a marketing major. Miss Cleo Jane Gross. This fall, Cleo went to Lake Forest College as a performing arts major. Miss Madison Cerise Markakis. This fall, Maddie will enter the Colorado School of Mines as a computer science major. Mr. Quinn Harvey Miller. Miss Chloe Elizabeth Parrish. First of all, Chloe will enter Mason University as an undeclared major.
I love you, Chloe!
Miss Aja Monique Salinas. This fall, Aja will enter Colorado Mason University as a psychology major. Mr. Matthew Poet Smith.
Hey, Matthew! You did it, Matt!
Mr. Andrew Timothy Van Schaik. Psychology major.
Class of 2017. Turn your tassels to the left of your mortarboard and face the audience. The Caprock Academy Class of 2017. Graduates, please be seated. As we conclude, I would like to thank Mr. Collins and Mr. Butcher for sharing their thoughts and for their service to our students. Mr. Marshall, Mrs. Swanger, Mrs. Miller, the high school band and choir for their musical accompaniment, and the Commencement Committee for planning this event. I would especially like to thank the parents of all of our students, particularly the parents of our seniors, for trusting us with the education of their children. It is an honor and a pleasure to watch them grow in so many ways. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for our 5th annual Caprock Academy Commencement.